Welcome to the Only Dream Big podcast, starring your host, Donnie Bedney. Only Dream Big is a podcast where Donnie will share tips and experiences on different topics, such as acquisition entrepreneurship, human capital, and the future of the workforce. He is the president of PSP Metrics and has been in the assessment and human capital management industry for more than 15 years, with the goal of driving change through people. As your guide on dreaming big, let's hear from the man himself.
So welcome, friends, to another episode of the Only Dream Big podcast. I'm your host, Donnie Bedney, and so excited today to have a special guest, with us, a good buddy of mine, Ed. And as we're moving forward, he has written just an amazing book, Drive Your Career, 9 high-impact ways to take responsibility for your own success. I've garnered a few tips, frankly, from it, and just thought that, as a result of reading it, that we definitely had to get together and have a conversation about it so we could inform you all. Ed, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Donnie. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, obviously, the Only Dream Big podcast, we talk about a lot of things, and the overall concept of dreaming big from an individual perspective, or even as we think about visions for companies. The constant there is the individual, and so what was really the inspiration for you, behind the book, and can you give us a little bit of background on where that came from?
Absolutely. And, before I do that, I just want to tell you, Donnie, that, when you think about the topic of your podcast being dreaming big, there are a few other things that you can dream big about as much as your own career. And regardless of the book or, any of the work that I do, you are the number one asset you own. And if you're not dreaming big about who you can become and what you want to do and where you want to be, you're missing a huge opportunity. So I love that you have this podcast. I love that you're helping people dream big. And I would just encourage our listeners to dream big about your career. There is, are a few things less important than that. And it's a great place to put your energy and time. So I have been a leadership coach now for about 14 years. I began to notice as I was working with clients that there were certain stories or observations that I had that repeated themselves. And regardless of whether they were a company president or a frontline supervisor, these stories influenced and impacted them in positive ways. So I started to pay attention to these stories that I had with others and started to make note of them and came up with 9 stories that seemed to be repeating themselves. And these weren't ones I brought up on purpose. These came up very naturally in these conversations. And I thought, well, hey, this could be the source of my second book, which is to share these 9 stories that I've been telling and observing with people for almost 15 years about how to drive your career, how to be more in charge of where you're going and what you're doing versus looking back and feeling as if you were just a passenger. And so this is all experiential. This comes from actual experiences with business professionals in every industry at all levels about how they can do things more effectively to be more productive.
Yeah. And with that, man, I would say that early on I was a little surprised, but pleasantly surprised. With one of the sections, just as you're talking about be positive, with your boss, right? So this it frankly resonated well with me, just because no person is an island. And so, in throughout my career, I've always had, strong relationships with the people I've reported to. But can you also share, and once again, you talked about the experiential nature of this, but can you just, share with the people, for those who may even have, I think it's easy to kind of isolate yourself and potentially think that, this is just about you. But just the power of being able to collaborate with the person that, frankly, you report to and probably spend, some of the most time with.
Well, this is a mythology that is slowly eroding as time passes. We grew up in an environment where we thought there was all hierarchy and people reported to certain people. You had certain jobs to do. You came in, did the job, went home, end of story. And we have been very mildly, subtly transitioning to a workplace where relationships and how you get along with people, how you impact people, how you influence people, what people think about you are important. And
Hmm.
at some point the bell is going to swing over to the side where now how I'm viewed, what my reputation is, how I connect with people is going to be almost as important as what
Yeah.
I do. I've heard many people say that being good at what you do is table stakes, that there
Mm.
needs an assumption that you're
Hmm.
good at what you do. How
Yeah.
you do it, how you lead people, how you motivate people, how you build relationships in order to be more effective is not something that we have spent as much time on. I think I can speak
Ooh.
for you, I can speak for myself. When I went to high school and college, I did
Yeah.
not have any classes on how to navigate conflict or how to be brave at work or how to communicate effectively. There were some
Yeah.
courses that touched on it a little bit, but these are not areas that we spent time working on. And when we
Hmm.
get placed in as a manager, suddenly these are the expectations that are there, that I can navigate conflict, that I can say things that are difficult to other people, that I can do things
Yeah.
that I never had any training on. So,
Hmm.
this is where the value of the book comes through, which is really helping people recognize certain things, not everything, but
Yeah.
certain things that they could be doing a little bit differently to be more effective. And it all is tied around the goal of having better relationships. Everybody who is listening to this podcast should do a self assessment and say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 6,
Yeah.
where is my relationship with my boss? And for anybody who feels it's a 4 or lower, there are things
Mm.
you need to be doing, not your boss, but you need to be doing to ensure that you have a positive relationship with your boss.
Wow. Yeah. Now, as you talk about the erosion and just as I mean, there's so many articles and things written, at this point, and we were talking just a little bit, prior to the recording, about the talent pool, right? About what they're coining the Great Resignation, right? And people are transitioning, and so can you expound on kind of what you're seeing, what you're hearing from clients, et cetera. And because it seems to me that, if people are bold enough to, resign, right, and literally leave the place that they're working, then it seems like a golden opportunity, to then take a step back and be more intentional about evaluating, the next organization, right, that you want to be a part of, and which I think probably has a significant impact potentially on your success as you continue to dream big, but may also tie into exactly that concept that we were talking about, and being able to be positive with your new boss or the new person that you're working with.
Well, I think the pandemic has created a reaction that nobody could have anticipated, which was 2 years ago. We all went to the office Monday through Friday. And I was joking with a colleague the other day that, I think back to 10 years ago when I worked for corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
it took bravery to even to ask to work for a day at home, right? It just wasn't
Exactly.
even a concept that was accepted. You were expected to be in the office Monday through Friday, and there were certain
Yeah.
jobs across the country because there wasn't an office that they worked from home. But if you
Mm-hmm.
worked near a corporate office, regardless of how long it took you to get there, you were expected to be there. Jump
Yeah.
ahead to 2021, suddenly everyone's working from home, and
Mm-hmm.
now they like it, right? So, I
Mm-hmm.
think this great resignation is coming from two places. One, I think the pandemic has caused people to pause a little bit and say,
Yeah.
am I enjoying what I've been doing? Is this really what I've been doing? And the pandemic has just created this ability to do it. If the pandemic hadn't happened, they'd still be going in Monday through Friday and,
Sure.
pickaxing away and trying to make great progress. And then the second thing is there more for me, right? So,
Yeah.
should I keep doing what I have been doing? And, there are now some variables that were never in play. So for something like, hey, I want to be the type of person who works from home because now that I've done it for a year and a half, I
Yeah.
kind of like it. So, gee,
Yeah.
is there a role or a company I can work at that doesn't have these restrictions and can allow me to work from home? Again, 2 to 3 years ago, this wasn't even a point of conversation because it just didn't exist. So,
Yeah.
I think the great resignation impacts different industries a little bit different. I have clients who have had very little resignation of people because of the
Yeah.
policies and the way that they operate their business. And then there
Sure.
are other industries that are impacted significantly.
Yeah.
It's also happening at a time where there just seems to be this talent pool reduction, where even if people are resigning, it's like, well, where are they going? Because we have a
Can't find them.
Yeah, we have a local, gas station slash food service store that put up a sign saying we're closing at 6 every night. And so I
Yeah,
said to them one day, "Gee, why are you guys closing at 6?" And they said, "Because we don't have anyone who can
yeah,
work at night." And I'm like,
yeah,
"Wow, this is a big company. I can't believe there's nobody who would want to work at this location in the evenings, but they don't
yeah,
have anyone." So there's a talent pool reduction, and I'm not a sociologist, so I don't know the reason why, combined with these new perspectives on
yeah,
how we can work that's just creating havoc in the workplace.
yeah, yeah. You all just, these 9 stories and kind of, points. I would almost call them principles. Frankly, are really strong. And so, one of the things that I'd like to tie in is I actually just wanted to, go to another one of those kind of principles, which I'm wondering. When you think about the Great Resignation once again and kind of what people are doing, can you talk a little bit about, the fact that pausing is powerful, right? And so getting the opportunity for folks to, kind of pause, especially in a time when, one, we've been forced to slow down, frankly, right? But people are anxious about getting back into, the new normal or, whatever whatever that is, right?
Right.
But can you talk about the concept of, pausing is powerful, a little bit more?
Sure. And, to be candid, Donnie, when I wrote the book, I wrote most of it pre-pandemic, so I didn't even have this kind of frame of mind and reference.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there are some correlations. The concept of pausing is important because in most organizations, they have a get it done type environment, right? It's go, 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 work 60 hours a week. And part of it is because we want to stay ahead of our competition, right? We don't ever want to rest and find out that somebody else got ahead of us before we could have been there, right? So
Yep.
it's go, 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 get it done, get it done. And what happens in those environments, because we are moving so quickly, that at the end of the project or at the end of the goal or the initiative, we delay or use time ineffectively because we weren't ready to get going.
Mm,
And so this
mm,
pausing was about spending more time up front, ensuring everybody has every question answered, that
mhm.
everybody's very clear on the mission, that everyone knows what their role and responsibility is, that everyone knows what the timetable is very clearly, so
Yeah.
that at the end we are achieving what we expected to achieve on time
Hmm.
and on budget versus the opposite. This
Yeah.
relates, of course, to what we experience now in the pandemic, which is taking time to think about your next steps and your opportunities to ensure
Hmm.
that you're moving in a direction that satisfies you. Too often
Exactly.
people are passengers in their career and they just wait or hope things will happen, hope they'll get promoted, et cetera, and they're not taking active steps
Yeah.
to move in the direction that they want to move in. So, pausing is technically a strategic effort in
Hmm.
order to ensure that what you're doing is getting done well versus
Yeah.
moving at such a pace that you end up dropping the ball near the end because you weren't ready to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. It really correlates well with a concept that a close brother and friend of mine introduced to me a few years ago, which is the power of creating versus catching.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, I think it was one of the things that really jumped out at me, and you articulated it so well, is that if people are willing to really, take a pause and, as they're owning their career and thinking through, as opposed to being reactive and, as you mentioned, this shortage of talent, right? So people, I'm sure, are getting pinged for different opportunities and jobs and, oh, we love your experience and we want you to be there. And, depending on where you are currently, right, and maybe some discomfort or you're disgruntled with the organization, how many times do folks, potentially take a leap to another organization without taking the time to be thoughtful about, what that is, and then potentially making a lateral move and being even more miserable, if you will. I know, I've probably done it at least once in my career. Thankfully not more than that, but just that really, really resonated with me.
Yeah, the Project Management Institute would tell you that a significant number of projects, and I'm speculating at this point, but I believe it's somewhere like 75 to 80% of projects are not
Hmm.
done on time and are not
Hmm.
done on budget. And I believe one of the reasons, there's certainly many, but one of the reasons is we